Kia ora whānau, this is Aotearoa Tekken Dude on YouTube, and on Twitter I go by @Tekken Aotearoa under the username Māori Like Fighting Games. And today I wanted to talk about the Tekken 7 Season 2 pass as well as just all of Tekken in general. But I mainly did want to focus on the Season Pass because, well, that's what everyone else keeps focusing on. So if you didn't know already, the Season 2 pass includes a couple of legacy characters, including guests. The first two out at the moment are Anna and Lei, legacy characters from Tekken 1 and 2. Now, I of course like these characters a lot. Naturally, I was going to buy them day one. And I did. And so, yes, the one thing that a lot of people keep talking about with these is, why are they not free? And all that other jazz. Well, I know why that is. And I'm pretty sure they do too, but they're just spoiled. Anywho, I'm pretty sure a lot of you would have heard Markman and a couple other community speakers go on about how development has cost and nowadays is a bit more expensive than usual. They're not wrong. At the same time though, you might be wondering why are they doing this and now. Well, if you didn't know, Season 1, while that did have minimal stuff, it also had some pretty good stuff, and a lot of it was presented the way it was simply because, well, as Harada put it simply, it was a lot more difficult than they thought it would be. And if you couldn't tell by the time frame between everything and how it was released, yep, that was definitely apparent. Although I have to say, they did a pretty damn good job of how it was handed out. And I have to say, with Season 2, they definitely managed it a lot better. But with legacy characters, again, going on the topic of why they are not free, obviously, in my opinion, it's because, well, actually, no, it's actually pretty obvious. They were never really planned to be there in the first place, which is how Season 2 is the way it is with the new balances and everything. It wasn't so to pretty much get everyone into the swing of things, even though that obviously is what it's all about. It was more so to balance the rest of the roster to welcome the returning characters, as well as Negan from The Walking Dead. How the fuck is he gonna play? Well, anyway, well, so yes, that pretty much sums up everything if you want the brief version of it. But of course the longer version of it is, well, the way the game has been built, as they said from day one back in 2014, yes it has been that long, Tekken 7 was always meant to be a giant experiment. That's pretty much what this is. Tekken 7, fated experimentation and innovation. That's basically all they have done ever since the very third game. Experimenting and innovating. Expanding on the game in some areas, while also needing to cut back in certain other areas. However, for as much as they did cut back, the more you go into the game, or at least the more I go into the game, there's definitely a lot here. More so than many people might think. If you compare and contrast this to other season passes that have come out for other fighting games, you're going to find that not only does Tekken look pretty similar, but Tekken actually handles it a lot better in other aspects. Another thing that I also love about this is also the free content they have put out over the course of this game's release. And of course, with the Season 2 pass, the one thing that I definitely do feel about it is that I feel that it's more of a response to the success, not just to the first Season Pass, but to Tekken 7 as a whole. Now that is actually very apparent because, well, as you could tell, just at the beginning of 2018, Tekken 7 did reach its sales target, which it predicted it would reach in 1 year, and it was able to achieve that in only 6 months. Now, of course, we all know about how Dragon Ball FighterZ completely blitzed everyone with how it achieved that in just 5 days, but that's besides the point. Long story short, Tekken 7, the developers said they want to continue to support this title. However, you may have noticed that between this game and Street Fighter V, they never really gave us a time frame. Why is that? Well, it's because not even they know how long they wanted to support it. But, obviously, we as the fans, we spoke with not only our wallets, but also with our voices, and more importantly, our hearts. Our love for the series is what's keeping the game going right now. As you can see, in the tournament's perspective, everyone, and I mean everyone, is completely in love with the game, which is how it made top 3 at EVO. Now, compare this to other games that people say would have had a lot more, and arguably some of them still do. Their longevity quickly went down in comparison to Tekken 7. And why is that? Well, like I said, this game, they said from day one, they experimented and innovated, and I remember them saying a lot of this crap because well, they're very vocal about it. Now, of course, yes, a lot of the developers have gone on Twitter and they've said all this other stuff, yada yada yada. But with Tekken, they were very vocal about it towards pretty much everyone. And that continues to be the case even today. 1 year later, Tekken 7 is still going very strong, and while a lot of people do have a lot of mixed views on how both Season 1 and 2 are being handled, if there is one thing that we can all agree on, it's that it's pretty fucking awesome. So anyway, that's just my brief little say-so on what I think of the game right now. I will say more. Now, in terms of how Anna and Lei are being handled, I reckon they did a really good job of bringing those characters back. Now, of course, as I said at the beginning of the video, there are a lot of people that are upset about the fact that these characters are not free. However, you have to remember, this is not Tekken Tag Tournament 2. Tekken Tag Tournament 2 is a very old-fashioned game. Now, yes, a lot of games are going back to the old-fashioned formula, but Tekken was very, very old-fashioned. Even right now, there are a lot of people who don't see that a lot of Tekken's success still comes from their arcades. And basically, the way they handle their arcade versions of the game, they're basically the beta versions. And quite honestly, I feel that's actually still a really good way to handle it, even though I myself can't go out and play these versions. The only other time I really did was back in 2016 when I took a trip to Japan. But that wasn't more so to play the game, that was for other personal business. But still, when you compare the way that this game, even though it has quite a lot in common with, say, Street Fighter V, you can obviously tell that in terms of communication, handling, as well as overall love and care for the product, Tekken 7 ultimately came out on top because of how well it was handled by not only the developers, but also the community. Another big difference is also their season passes. Now, obviously, yes, Street Fighter V has 3 season passes, but only one of them really feels like it's a true step up, and that is of course the Season 3 pass. Now, when you compare that to the past 2 season passes that they did, a lot of them, yeah, even nowadays, people still feel a bit stung about that. You compare that to the Season 1 pass, now I was very, very accepting of the first season pass, for many reasons. 1, it was their first season pass. And 2, well, you can probably guess what the second reason is. They put Geese Howard into the game. Now, having Geese Howard in there, naturally, I was all for it. Now, I did have a little bit of a speculation that it would be Geese, maybe even someone else, but as soon as they said there'd be 2 guest characters in the season pass, I was all in there. And while I did not think they would do a second season pass, ultimately, I'm glad they did. And I have to say, it is working out very well for them, in terms of balancing, the way the characters have been handled, and the fact that we still have more on the way, that while many people have a fair idea who they are, if there's one thing we can all be certain of, it's that Negan will definitely be interesting. Also, in terms of how some people might say this is a rip-off and it's a big turn-off for them, at the end of the day, that's very understandable. There are 2 sides to it, and you think what you think and you do what you do. Now, I can't knock anyone for saying that these passes are bad. Now, I myself, while I do love the season passes, and I even did give in and buy Season 3 of Street Fighter V. But that was mainly because that one appealed to me more as being a true season pass, whereas the first 2 season passes was just cut back content because, you know, the game was rushed out. Which is another reason why I'm more lenient to Tekken 7. The game was delayed to make the game the way it was meant to be. And you'll find that there's a lot in the game. It still has its original content, it's just spread out in a way that you wouldn't expect. Like, for example, how the arcade endings are not in the arcade mode. They're still there, they're just in the character episodes alongside story mode. All that jazz. But yes, I probably will go more in depth about this in the future and maybe do more videos on it. But this one I really wanted to do mainly because, well, this is actually my first attempt at recording my own voice and putting my thoughts out there. I will probably do more of these when I have more time. But, you know, work, life, etc, etc. This is Altered or Tekken Dude, and if there is one thing that we can all agree on, is that we're more than happy to support all this, rather than the shit that EA is doing. Seriously. Fuck those guys.